stop thinking that they're just economic, although those are important. They're also about schools, about public safety, about what's going on in the neighborhood. We had 2 Democrats get elected president and reelected since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. President Clinton and President Obama. President Clinton ran on 100,000 community police officers. We became identified with defund the police. One of those worked both policy-wise and politically. President Obama was criticized for being the deporter-in-chief. And then there were a lot of other Democrats who talked about free health care at the border if you cross the border illegally. One of those have worked politically and be the right policy. We have to be where the American people are at their kitchen table. Not where we want them to be, but where they are, and talk to them. And the fact is, on a whole slew of issues, just take President Clinton's election in '92. For 20 years, there was a campaign against law and order by Richard Nixon, welfare queens by Ronald Reagan, Willie Horton by George Bush. It was Bill Clinton's message on a slew of issues, from crime to immigration to welfare reform to drug policy, that got right with the American people so they could hear the rest of what we're talking about. We can't ignore a set of issues because it makes us uncomfortable that makes the American people uncomfortable. If they get right on how they live their lives, how they want to raise their kids, how they want to see what goes on in their communities and in their cities, then we're going to be okay. And I'll give you a classic example. I think this idea on what President Trump is talking about, raiding schools and places of worship on immigration, is as stupid as the Democrats closing schools and places of worship during COVID. And they are going to make a massive mistake of going after immigrants in schools, hospitals, and places of worship. And that's where Democrats can stand up and say, look, what, you got a criminal background? Out of here. Schools, hospitals, places of worship. That's as crazy as what we did during COVID. And we advocated. And it was very clear within 6 months that it was a wrong policy as it relates to public health and achieving educational goals. There are places to stand and also understand what happens and how people live their lives. Not how we want them to live their lives, but how they actually live their lives, and that we're in touch with it from a value system. They can then hear everything else we have to talk about.
Former
now,
U.S.
can I weigh in on?
Oh yeah.
Can I weigh in on one other subject?
Yeah, go ahead.
On the MVP, it's between Lamar and Josh. Down to those two. That's where it is. I know I think every guest here forward should be asked these fundamental questions.
Well,
that's my 2 choices. And I have some other choices on the movie.
All right. And we'll have you weigh in on Blake Lively when you come back next. Former U.S. ambassador.
No, I might leave that to another family member.
Rahm, wrong one. Rahm Emanuel, thank you very much. Actually, what Rahm was talking about, good segue.